Take a slow breath and stay with me for a minute, because this is not a light message and it did not arrive at a random time. Something important has been building in silence for longer than you know, and the weight of it is finally too heavy to carry in secret. There is someone connected to you who has been holding back truth, feelings, and words they should have spoken a long time ago. On the outside, it may have looked like distance, delay, coldness, or even moving on. But deep under that surface, something else has been happening. The silence was never as simple as it seemed. The quiet was covering fear. The distance was hiding pressure. And now that pressure is rising fast. So do not skip past this part, because what is coming next cuts deeper than pride and deeper than excuses. This person is starting to feel the real cost of staying silent. They are starting to understand that time is not endless, that patience is not permanent, and that some doors do not slam shut with noise. They close softly, they close slowly, and when they close inside the heart, they do not open easily again. If you have been sensing a shift without clear proof, trust that feeling. Something has changed, something has been moving in the dark, and right now, that hidden movement is turning into urgency. There is a person in your life who has kept something locked inside for much longer than they would ever admit out loud. This did not happen overnight. Their feelings did not suddenly fade, and they did not simply wake up one day with a cold heart. What really happened was quieter than that. They pushed down what they felt because they did not know what to do with it. They buried it under delay, distraction, pride, and silence. They told themselves it was easier that way. Easier to wait. Easier to stay vague, easier to avoid the risk of saying something real. But buried feelings do not disappear. They sit in the dark and grow heavy. They wait. Then one day they rise all at once. That is where this energy is coming from now. Not from peace, not from full courage, from panic, from pressure, from the painful shock of realizing too much time may have already been lost. Something recent woke them up. Maybe they saw your name. Maybe they heard about you. Maybe they felt your absence more clearly than before. Maybe life finally became quiet enough for truth to get louder than their excuses. Whatever triggered it, it hit hard. One thought landed with full force. They may lose you for real. And that thought did not come gently. It came in stillness. It came late at night. It came when their phone felt empty and the noise around them could no longer protect them. When the world got quiet, the truth got loud. They could no longer hide from the fact that nobody has carried your place in the same way. Nobody has listened like you listened. Nobody has understood them with so few words. Nobody has offered comfort the way you did, without trying to control, force, or overpower them. That realization has been pressing on them hard. But listen carefully, because this part matters. Their urgency is not made of love alone. It is also made of fear. Fear of losing something rare. Fear of losing a person who made them feel seen. Fear of losing a connection they secretly depended on more than they ever confessed. If pride were not standing in the way, and if fear were not building walls around their mouth, they would say something simple and honest. They should have done more. They should have spoken sooner. They believed they had more time than they truly had. They assumed your care would remain in place no matter how long they delayed. They did not understand that silence can wound. They did not understand that doing nothing is still a choice, and choices leave marks. Now they are starting to see that clearly. They carry guilt for not showing up when presence mattered. Guilt for holding back when honesty was needed. Guilt for choosing distance because it felt safer. Stay with this, because the truth gets sharper from here. What felt safe then now feels costly. What felt controlled then now feels like regret. This person does not struggle because they feel too little. They struggle because they feel more than they know how to carry. Opening up to you would have meant risk. It would have meant facing rejection, uncertainty, and parts of themselves they were not ready to face. So instead of letting the heart lead, they let fear make the big decisions. They let pride speak. They let silence speak even louder. And now those old choices have turned into consequences they can no longer ignore. There is also another layer making this heavier for them. They can feel that you are not the same as before. Your energy has changed. Your presence feels different. You may still care, but you are no longer chasing. You are no longer repeating yourself. You are no longer standing in that painful place where you kept hoping confusion would finally turn into clarity. That shift unsettles them deeply because they leaned on your patience more than was fair. They leaned on your softness while keeping their own walls in place. Somewhere inside, they assumed you would always be there, still understanding, still open, still available. They did not imagine the day would come when you would quietly choose yourself. But you did. And that quiet choice speaks louder than any argument ever could. Keep listening, because this is where the message becomes impossible to misunderstand. They are not only afraid of losing you, they are afraid of losing the feeling of being safely understood by someone who truly saw them. Only now are they beginning to understand that not every bond can be rebuilt once it has been neglected for too long. Not every connection can be replaced by someone new. That truth follows them into quiet moments. It shows up when they try to move forward and still feel unstable inside. It returns every time they compare another person to you and notice the difference immediately. That is why the urgency keeps growing. It is not about controlling you. It is not about winning. It is about realizing that time has changed shape. They can feel a door moving toward closure, and the scariest part is that it is not closing with drama. It is closing softly, calmly, almost invisibly, and that kind of closing feels final. They want to reach out, they want to explain, they want to offer an apology that sounds real and not defensive. But fear stops them again and again. Fear asks if it is already too late. Fear whispers that maybe you do not care in the same way anymore. Fear tells them that if they finally show their real self, they may meet rejection they cannot hide from. So they hesitate. They write messages in their mind and erase them before they are ever sent. They imagine conversations that never happen. They think through every possible outcome and stay still anyway. If this sounds familiar, hold on, because there is more underneath it. Delay is no longer protecting them, it is exposing them. And deep down, they know words by themselves will not fix what silence damaged. This is not a promise that everything ends happily. It is not a soft fantasy, and it is not a guarantee. It is closer to a distant confession. They are not pretending all the damage is repaired. They are not pretending they suddenly have every answer. What they are finally admitting, at least inside themselves, is that treating you like you would always be there was wrong. They did not fully know your value until they felt the empty space where you used to stand. And when truth arrives this late, it arrives carrying pain, because it comes with the knowledge that something precious may already be slipping out of reach. But what this means for you matters more than what it means for them. Listen closely. This is not telling you to wait around. It is not telling you to forgive before you are ready. It is not pushing you back into old pain. It is only making visible what their actions failed to show. You mattered more than they ever expressed. Your absence feels louder to them now than your presence once did. What existed between you was real, even if it was handled badly. The power now is in your hands, not theirs. Real power does not rush because someone else has entered panic. Desperation does not always equal readiness. A person can feel deep regret and still not be ready to love with steadiness. That matters. Do not miss that part. Strong feelings are not the same as strong follow-through, and by now you know the difference between words that sound intense and actions that remain true over time. They have been going back over old moments, and the smallest things hurt the most now. They remember how you checked on them for no special reason. They remember how you could read their mood before they said a word. They remember how you kept trying to understand instead of jumping to blame. They remember how you held yourself together even when they pulled away. Those memories press on them because they reveal something difficult. You met them at a depth they had not yet reached inside themselves. You were ready for honesty they were still avoiding. For a long time they treated distance like shelter. Now that same distance feels like exposure. They feel seen by you even through silence, and your silence has changed its quality. Before it felt like a pause, now it feels like real distance. Before, it felt temporary. Now it feels like something that could continue without them. That frightens them more than anger would. Your calm unsettles them. Calm can feel more final than pain. Calm says you accepted what is real. Calm says you stopped building your emotional world around their confusion. Calm says you are no longer waiting to be chosen. And that changes everything. They are beginning to understand something else too. You were never asking for perfection. You were asking them to show up. You were asking for steady effort, not grand speeches. You wanted consistency. You wanted truth lived out in behavior. And now they can see with painful clarity how often they chose comfort when courage was the thing required. They told themselves again and again that they were not ready. They had reasons for the silence, explanations for the distance, stories about why the moment was never quite right. But readiness does not just appear one day like magic. It is a choice. It is something a person decides through action. And when you were offering care, honesty, and real presence, they did not meet you there fully. That realization hurts them now because the chance no longer feels the same. They can feel the change in your tone, in your pace, in the way you no longer explain your worth. The reaching has been replaced by quiet confidence, and that changes the whole ground under their feet. They once confused your patience with endless availability. They thought your gentleness meant unlimited time. Now they are caught between wanting to come forward and fearing they cannot sustain what they say they want. They want to apologize, but they are afraid of making promises they may fail to keep. They want closeness, but they worry about the effort required to hold it with care. So they remain stuck between desire and avoidance, between longing and old habits. That is why their energy feels restless and mixed. Their heart pulls one way while their actions still move another. And this is the part many people do not want to face. Imagination is easy. Real change is hard. Real change asks for repeated action. It asks for honesty after the first emotional wave passes. It asks a person to become different, not just sound different for one moment. You, meanwhile, have been changing in a quieter and stronger way than they expected. Your care did not vanish. It matured. You sat with sadness and did not let it destroy you. You faced disappointment without hiding from it. You let the truth become clear. They are only starting that process now, and timing matters. Learning through loss feels different than learning while love is still close enough to hold. They know that even if they speak now, things cannot simply return to the old version. What they miss most may be the version of you that trusted them without holding back. But trust does not reset just because the right words finally arrive. Once trust changes, the whole shape of the bond changes with it. So now they stand at a threshold. Behind them is the old comfort of hiding. In front of them is the risk of real honesty. If they stay where they are, they may lose you completely. If they step forward, they have to face themselves with no excuses left. That is what they avoided for so long. What you have been sensing is not random confusion. It is a real shift happening at a deep level. Loss does not always enter loudly. Sometimes it comes as a whisper. Sometimes it shows up as a change in presence that cannot be argued away. They feel that whisper now when they imagine you moving on with peace instead of bitterness. That image shakes them because they cannot control it. They cannot charm their way around it. They cannot stay busy enough to silence it forever. For the first time, they are being forced to see what fear has truly cost them. For so long, this was not only about timing, it was about fear of being seen fully, fear of failing in love, fear of not knowing how to hold something real without damaging it. They keep returning to those moments when they could have spoken and stayed quiet instead. Those moments seemed small then. They feel heavy now. You did not disappear all at once. You slowly adjusted to what they kept showing was available. You stopped carrying the full emotional weight alone. You stopped filling silence with hope. You stopped hurting yourself to keep a bond alive that was not being met equally. That happened gradually. No grand speech, no dramatic ending, just a quiet shift into self-respect. They see it now, and what disturbs them most is your calm strength. They understand mixed signals. They know confusion, but they do not know what to do with someone who has become clear. Someone who has stopped waiting to be chosen. Someone standing firmly in their own worth. That is where their fear becomes even more layered. They worry that coming forward will reveal they still are not ready. They worry they cannot become the person you need. They worry you see them more honestly than they see themselves. And that is a hard place for a person to stand when they have spent years hiding behind delay. Stay here with me because this next truth is important. An apology can open a door, but it cannot rebuild trust by itself. Only change can do that. They want to tell you their feelings were real. They want to explain how overwhelmed they felt. They want to say the silence was not emptiness. But they are learning that arriving late does not erase what you lived through. Good intentions do not cancel pain. Regret does not automatically create reliability. They are inside the discomfort of missed chances, self-awareness, and change that came after the best moment may have already passed. That is the real urgency. Not just reaching you, but facing themselves. You were like a mirror showing them depth depth, courage, and emotional truth. Instead of looking fully, they turned away. Now, without your steady presence, they feel the loss of that reflection. They feel cut off from a part of themselves they only touched when they were with you. That is why this goes deeper than simple longing. They are waking up to themselves, and that awakening hurts. They know they cannot return casually now. They know the old version of them is not enough. They know they would need honesty, consistency, and effort, not just emotion. The stakes feel real because the truth is visible now. They do not want to come back as the same guarded person, but they are also not fully sure who they are without those walls. That uncertainty shakes them. It leaves them unsteady. It leaves them wondering whether they can truly follow through if they open this door. And if you have felt mixed energy from them, that is why. One part wants closeness. Another part is still afraid of everything closeness demands. So the deeper power remains with you. You do not need to rush because someone else finally feels pressure. You do not need to reopen a door simply because they can now hear the silence. You do not owe fast forgiveness. You do not owe immediate trust. The only thing you owe is honesty with yourself. If your heart still feels something, let it be honest. If your spirit feels tired, let that be honest too. If part of you sees the love and another part remembers the wound, let both truths exist. You are not required to choose based on their panic. You are allowed to choose based on your peace, and that may be the deepest part of this whole message. The real question is not only whether they feel the loss now. The real question is whether anything real, steady, and lasting can follow from that feeling. Can they move beyond fear? Can they do more than think, imagine, and regret? Can they become clear where they were once vague? Can they stay present where they once disappeared? Those are the questions that matter now, because in the end, deep feelings without changed behavior will only repeat the same pain in a new form. And you have already lived through enough of that. So if they come forward, let actions speak longer than words. Let time reveal truth. Let consistency prove what emotion alone cannot prove. And until then, keep your center, keep your clarity, keep the peace you fought hard to rebuild. That peace is valuable. That peace is earned. And no matter what happens next, do not abandon yourself to save someone who once abandoned honesty.